Hey, for those of you who've never been to SkillsUSA National Championships and want to know what it's all about, we're here to talk about that today. And with me is Rodney Bolton, a gentleman that's been here for a lot of years, Rodney. So they want to get the behind-the-scenes stuff of what's really going on, what the student has to do to compete here nationally.
Okay. Yeah, first off, in this area, this is the metalworking area. In the metalworking area, we're trying to evaluate the skill that the student has that would be necessary to repair a variety of different types of dents that you would find in minor accidents, or maybe part of a major accident, but a secondary damage or something along those lines.
Yeah, I noticed the fender's all marked up with all sort of reminders here on what to do. So take me through that fender a little bit and let the students see what they have to do.
Yep. We'll start with the front of the fender. Basically, the front of the fender, a competitor is actually going to have to metalwork it completely, all the way from the cleaning stage. And we kind of simulate the cleaning stage because we can't have the chemicals out here on the floor.
Right, right.
So we would tell them, okay, that you start at the point where you've already cleaned it, and then they would begin the metalworking area of that particular spot in order to get the metal worked completely out to where it is. We would like to see perfect. So as close as they can possibly get it. Not every student's going to get it perfect, but we want them to try and do the best that they can to get it as close as they can.
Okay, so I see no filler, no heat, none of that stuff. It's just plain old-fashioned metal finish.
Right, because that's all we're evaluating. Can they metal finich a panel?
Okay, and the next step says, hey, you can use a little bit of filler here, right? So
that's
talk
right.
about that.
In that particular dent, you have an area that's low, but it's not extremely low. So they really don't have a lot of work to do to it to get it out. A lot of students we find come to this competition and they overwork that spot. But truly what we're really evaluating, can you work body filler? Can you sand the body filler down? Can you actually go through the complete repair process and do it properly?
I'm sure there's some metal finishing involved there as well before the body filler, obviously.
It's just minor.
Mm-hmm.
We don't expect some students could actually take that dent, just rough it out and prep it out for filler, and then put the filler on top of it.
So you're really looking for their ability to actually finish filler.
Right, because one year we had a competitor come here and they metal finished everything, so we decided we needed to see that they could work body filler.
Okay, good. And what's that third spot about there? No shrinking or whatever?
In that case, we're looking at a spot that is very stretched, and if you want to shrink it, you can, but some students have the ability to cold shrink it, so it wouldn't be necessary to use heat. But if they want to, they can. We want to see that they can take a piece of stretched metal and return it back to its original condition. And again, if you can get that perfect, great, but you get it as close as you can.
See, shrinking metal always bothered me. That was the one tough thing for me. I know some of the students are probably facing that, like, oh man, I'm not sure about that. So
right.
At least we have it here. We know we have to metal finish without filler. We know we have to see how you do your filler. We also have to see how you're doing on with a stretched panel.
Something I'd like to point out with the area that needs to be, that you could shrink, is what a lot of students will do is they'll come in here and they'll think that we're going to use torches. But we don't use torches in here. We do not have torches in this area. You have to use a stud gun shrinking method. You cannot use an open flame. It's too dangerous, number one, to use, and it's not used that much in the industry like it used to be.
Well, that's good, because a lot of students probably do practice with a flame, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's good to hear. Well, what's the next stop?
We can go over to the welding segment.
All right, let's go. Okay, Rodney, here we are in a welding area, and I know it's very important today with all the different types of steels in today's cars that the technician knows how to weld properly. So let's talk about that.
Yes, that's for sure. Cars are mainly welded together today. Yeah, we have a lot of adhesives. We have parts that are bolted on, but one of the primary concerns is that the cars are returned to pre-accident condition after an accident, and one of those concerns is that the car is welded correctly. So we do have to evaluate whether the student has the ability to weld something.
Okay, well let's give them a little eye into what we have to do when we're in the competition here. What are they asked to do?
This is really something that a student could prepare for way before the competition, way before they ever get here. As long as the school has a welder that is a good operating welder with the correct wire size, the correct gas, and they're going through a practice situation, they could prepare for this very easily. A lot of schools already are familiar with the WQT, the welding qualification test that's done through ICAR, and that evaluates a technician's true ability can they really produce a good, decent weld. And what we're looking to do is the same thing. So what we're doing here is we're simulating the WQT, so it's very closely related to the WQT. So if a student can go through the complete WQT process, and this year they actually added the open butt weld, so that's a little bit different. And in previous years, if if some instructors had competitors here that did not do that, that is something would be required. So you could look at the WQT and say, if my student can do that very well, then they should be very successful here.
Okay, so you have some samples here we want to talk about?
Yeah, the WQT basically is using a structural style steel and providing a variety of different types of welds that would be generally used on an automobile. They measure the distance, that it can't be welded too far, not too short, too wide, too tall, the typical things that a weld would be evaluated.
And also maybe what's happening on the back of the panel.
Yeah, they'll look at the back of the panel. I don't believe they don't go through an actual structural destruction test, because typically you can look at the back and tell me, yeah, there are some times when you can't see that 100%, but time is of the essence here. You have an hour and a half, and they would not have enough time to actually go through that.
Okay, now the position of these welds, are they overhead welds?
Yes, it would be in the overhead position, or they're going to be welded in a vertical position. So there will be no horizontal welds. Everything would be up and down and overhead.
Okay, so what's the toughest weld you think here in the competition?
Well, I think for me, it varies between people,
right.
But for me, it's the open butt joint with the backing because of the distance of the root gap. Right. And when you're doing that in the overhead position, it's a little bit more complicated. So I usually start out, if I start a student out practicing, I would recommend that they would practice that weld first and get very good at that, and the rest will usually come easy. And then it would be that open butt joint.
So the real key is here, if you follow WQT, you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, if you can do the WQT, you'll be in really good shape.
Okay, explain what that is again for those who may not know.
It's a welding qualification test. It's done through ICAR, and it's basically looking at all the different style welds that you could possibly do on an automobile, other than resistant type spot welding. There is no resistant type spot welding here in this competition yet, but it will be in a couple of years. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to that before you send a competitor.
Okay, so where are we off to next?
I think we should go to the frame repair.
Okay, let's go get some frames. Okay, Rodney, I know we're on the frames now. I know this scares the daylights out of some people when they see they have to actually do something with the frame of the car and structure of the car. So let's talk a little bit about that. What's the student supposed to know how to do?
Yeah, this is something that some students they panic when they see this part of the program. They're actually downstairs right now this year taking a test, a written test. So there's a written piece that goes along with this. And that written test would consume of being able to identify the different suspension components, having a good understanding of different steering alignment situations. So I would recommend that a student understands alignment procedures. If you have a program in the school that has an alignment machine, using that and understand the different types of measurements that are used and how they would apply to a damaged car are very important.
Okay, so basically it's structural alignment and it's steering and suspension alignment as well, right?
That's correct. So up here we're really looking at, on the floor, we're looking at, can they diagnose the different types of damage with the car sitting in pinch weld clamps, and understand what they're looking at underneath the vehicle, and evaluating the height measurements, the length measurements, the width measurements, cross-sectioning, and using a tram gauge to measure something out as far as distance goes.
An actual mechanical gauge you're going to use?
A mechanical gauge,
okay.
Yeah.
Now I know a lot of instructors out there may be thinking, I don't have frame equipment in my school, so how am I supposed to get my student prepared for something like this?
Yeah, and a lot of instructors do run into that. It is a cost situation because some of this equipment is extremely expensive.
Absolutely.
And we take that into consideration in this competition, but it would be very important for the instructor to make sure that the competitor, once they completed the state competition and they recognize that their students coming to this level, they need to think outside the box and get that student some training that is outside of the typical vocational education. And I'm sure there's plenty of shops in every area that would be more than willing to work with the students in that way.
Right, well great. The most important thing I think here is to get those students ready before they come here. And you don't have the equipment, go to a local repair facility maybe, contact one of these frame machine suppliers.
Right, that's an opportunity to go directly to the source. Sometimes they could take a student to a shop that has the equipment, even work with them on some of the equipment, computerized systems, just so they can touch and feel it a little bit. One of the things that they do here that a lot of people say that's an antiquated way of doing something, and that is the self-centering gauges that we use.
Right.
And I looked at
those,
the same way. That's old school, but they're not looking at the student's ability to necessarily. They're looking at, can they diaggnose the damage,
analyzing damage, right?
So that's part of this competition also. So having them a little familiar with the self-centering, dust the ones off that are in the corner, just so that they understand that yes, this is part of this competition. Not that we're using it to diagnose frame damage, but just to evaluate the plane of the vehicle and seeing the damage using those gauges.
Very good, very good. Great. Where are we off to next?
I think plastic repair.
Okay, plastic repair. Come on, let's go plastic repair. Okay, Rodney, well here we are at the plastic repair table, and the area here is full of bumper covers, you can see. So let's talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, that's, you can see there's a whole bunch of different bumper, well they're all identical, just like on the metalwork, all the fenders are identical. So everybody has the same type of repair that they're going through. And in this type of repair, they have an area of the bumper that's been sliced. So they're going to have to go through a method of repair using a 3M system in order to go through that complete repair process. So that means prepping it out, using the proper adhesives, using the proper backing, and if you had a 3M rep in your area, I'm sure the 3M rep could give thorough training on how to do this with your competitor.
Yeah, I think a lot of schools don't realize that the actual the vendors have training that they could come out and actually help the school out, help the instructor out with some curriculum.
That's correct. Just like with the frame repair process, with the plastic repair process. The reason that all these segments are up here is because we feel that it's important to our industry. Our industry puts this competition together. So it's not just put together just off the cuff. We put a lot of time and effort into doing this.
Well, I have to say the plastic repair area has to be one of the most important ones, because more and more composites and plastics, different types of plastics today.
That's true.
It's really something that ought to be paid attention to, and you have to know how to do it.
Yes, and it's the students, when they come to this section, they will need to know the different types of plastic, like your thermoplastic with olefin. They're going to have to know how you would treat a rigid plastic versus a flexible plastic, and understand the different products that are used in different repair situations, because there's a test that's given on the floor also, so that they would have to understand and be able to explain that on that test.
Okay, so they're giving a test on the floor. Is that a written exam sort of test?
It's a written test, yes.
Okay, but because these are all going to be the same material.
That's correct. All the product that we use here is 3M, because this section is sponsored by 3M. So it's going to be imperative that that competitor is not using another competitor's product, because it's not going to help them to do well in this competition.
Right. Now,
so for practice purposes, I mean, obviously schools use a lot of different materials, but when they get here, this is the product that we're using.
Okay, I imagine all these are polypropylene bumper covers.
These are a thermoplastic with olefin, and they do have the backing area but yes, they are that type of plastic, and it's something that pretty much across the board, most companies are treated in a certain way, but it's just important to be familiar with the product usage.
So, how many different types of repair? They have to do one type of repair on these bumper covers, or what are we talking about here?
They do this type of repair, and they do a tab repair, where they have to make a tab on the cover, on the bumper cover.
Okay, so they have one slice in the bumper cover and one tab replacement.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
What else? Anything else unique about this area that they should know to be prepared for?
I think that pretty much covers it. It's pretty straightforward, just like all the different areas in here it's a very methodical way of doing it. And as you can see, each competitor has their own station. They have their own number. They go to that area with that number assigned to them. They take very few tools in this area. You'll notice that a lot of competitors each year we find that are bringing big toolboxes, and we're trying to make it easier on the competitor by not having to load over 50 pounds of weight into a plane, and making it easier on the school systems that are having to send their competitors here.
It's kind of hard leaving your tools behind, though, isn't it?
It is sometimes. For example, if you brought a DA, we're not going to let you use it, because we have to be concerned with the environment that we're working in today.
Where's that written out where a student can find that out ahead of time before they get here? Is there anything that...
It's all on the SkillsUSA website.
Okay. And
it identifies the type of tools that they recommend you bring. For example, a student that comes here, they know not to bring a DA. It's because we're going to make you leave it in your toolbox. The systems that we're using are a vac system, so that keeps the dust from being in the air, and that's what we're looking for. So if a student, they wouldn't have a vac system typical unless they had that 3M tool, and then we would probably allow them to use it.
Right.
Because we're looking to capture the exhaust in the filter and keep the dust in the filter.
Yeah, good deal. So it is an important point about the tools, because a lot of times they'll just bring too much stuff with them, right? And another important point is where they find out is on the Skills website.
You go to that Skills website, it tells you exactly what tools are necessary, and before the competitions, if there's any changes that are made, it is always posted on a daily basis on that site. So you can go to the site, look up the changes that are taking place. You can look, for example, on the paint side, you can look up the refinishing materials. On the collision side, you can look up the types of materials that are going to be here. But if something changes along the way, for example, we made a change recently that we will only be supplying a certain type of material, and that is a Velcro sandpaper in metalwork and plastics. So if you came with sticky back, it's not going to work. So if you come with a hook it to, which they don't make anymore, it's not going to work. So you have to come with the right backing pad on your tools, so you don't have to worry about that here. We supply sanding blocks, we supply the DAs, we supply everything that's necessary for a competitor to compete in this area.
Okay, so have we completed our tour of the collision repair side?
I think so.
We appreciate it. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this. Remember, go to the Skills website to get all the information you need and download it before you get here ahead of time so you can be prepared.